Very much. Now the gentleman from California, Mr. Rouda, is recognized for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is one undeniable fact, and that is discrimination is discrimination, period, regardless of how it occurs. And with the testimony we've heard today, I feel like I'm on the Republican absurdity train as we hear some of these arguments. And I want to be clear here. Federal law does not expressly prohibit discrimination against the LGBTQ community. And Ms. Warblow, I'm going to direct my questions towards you. Is that a correct statement, what I just said?
There are very few places in federal law where there are express protections for LGBTQ people. And right now, the Supreme Court is contemplating whether or not to strip away rights from the LGBTQ community under Title VII and potentially other laws as well. We need express protections to guarantee non-discrimination.
So let's walk through these religious exemptions as we take a trip on this absurdity train. We talked a little bit earlier about the idea in a court case that supported the notion that an employer can withhold birth control and condoms to people that work for them because it's against their religious beliefs. Is that correct?
That's correct. Hobby Lobby.
Okay. There are religions who believe that no medical care should be provided whatsoever to them or their children. So if we take this absurdity train a little bit further down the road, is it possible that in the belief of religious exemptions that you would then not have to provide any health care to your employees if that was your religion?
Ignoring the confines of Hobby Lobby, this administration has put forward the idea that doctors and other medical care providers should be able to refuse to perform any type of medical service that conflicts with their beliefs.
So going back to the situation that Mr. Mitten experienced firsthand, if a hospital was religious-based that did not believe in addressing the medical needs of the LGBTQ community under the Trump administration and the absurdity of the Republican argument that they are making, all healthcare services could be denied by that hospital, and it's not a problem because Mr. Mitten can just go somewhere else. Is that the argument?
That's the intention of this administration, as they've made clear through their regulations.
So let's go a step further down the path here, because there are many protected classes that include race and color. So if those classes were not directly protected under U.S. law, and somebody had a faith-based reason to discriminate against them, under the Trump administration and the Republicans who support it, they too could be discriminated against. Is that correct?
So the Trump administration in their filings has drawn a hard line at race in most circumstances, but they've made clear that individuals with disabilities, women, people of minority faiths, and the LGBTQ community should be subject to a different set of standards, allowing for widespread discrimination, including in the healthcare space.
So it's okay to discriminate against some people, just not all people, depending on their specific circumstances, and whether those circumstances are specifically protected under United States law. I guess my question is, if there were other communities that were not specifically covered under U.S. law, is it possible that Republicans would also seek religious exemptions that would allow discrimination against those communities?
It's certainly possible. What I'm hearing is an expectation that everything be codified in statute before someone be provided protections. That is not the history of our country. Agencies have long adopted regulations that provide protections for beneficiaries on a number of bases, and the idea that they would no longer have the freedom to do so is quite troubling.
Mr. Minton, if I could move to you, I would like you to expand a little bit more on your personal experience of having health care denied to you, if you would take a few moments.
Yeah. Well, my personal experiences having health care denied to me did not end with my original hysterectomy. It's continued. Shortly after my phalloplasty surgery, I had an issue with my catheter not staying in place, and I went to the urgent care, and they couldn't take care of me because I couldn't take care of that issue, and they sent me to an emergency room. Unfortunately, the emergency room was in the same parking lot that and it was a Dignity Health hospital. I refused to go to the emergency room that was a Dignity Health hospital because they refused to recognize that I exist as a transgender person. And instead, I went into a public restroom and I called my surgeon and asked that they give me the directions over the phone. And while they were giving me the directions, I performed the operation on myself. Not only that, but more recently, a pharmacy made a mistake, and instead of giving me 5 pills of 25 milligrams each, they gave me 5 pills of 125 milligrams each. I was staying at my parents' house, and they discovered me barely able to speak and unable to walk. The nearest emergency room was Mercy San Juan Medical Center, which, as I said earlier in my testimony, was a Dignity Health chain. I needed to go to the emergency room. And instead of go in my drug stupor and even in my inability to talk, I was able to make out the sound, no, not that. And they took me to emergency room farther away. And just to relay the seriousness of this, when I got to that emergency room, they treated me as a stroke victim for a number of hours. So it's not only me that is avoiding these hospitals. I talk to friends and family who are both LGBTQ+ and not, and they won't go to these hospitals either. It's important to mention that 1 in 6 hospitals in California are Catholic beds. We can't go to these hospitals. And when it's in rural areas, it's even worse. It's the only hospital around. This is a matter of life and death.
Thank you, Mr. Minton, and thank you for your compelling testimony and showing the absurdity of the situation we're addressing. I yield back. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. The